Week one has finally arrived, which means real football, and we have a real treat with this one. USC at LSU on Sunday, and to help us break down one of the biggest games of the weekend, our friends Ryan Abraham from USCFootball.com and Glenn West of Go 24/7. Let's tell you a little bit more about the Trojans and the Tigers in this matchup. There are a lot of similarities between these two squads outside of going by three-letter acronyms. We'll talk about it more, but despite all of those connections, I gotta point out the most insane stat. This is the first ever matchup between Lincoln Riley and Brian Kelly, two guys who have won a lot of football. We'll see who wins on Sunday, but let's start the comparisons with the quarterbacks. Both teams having to replace Heisman Trophy winners, so how do we feel about the plan for replacing each of them? Ryan, start us off with USC's situation.
Never easy to replace generational talent. Caleb Williams goes #1 in the NFL draft and probably going to have a big year there. It's not easy to do, but you look at Lincoln Riley, he does have a track record of having a lot of success at that position. He's had 5 starting quarterbacks so far. Now he has Miller Moss. He'll be the 6th, but 4 of those 5 were Heisman finalists. And the one that wasn't, Spencer Rattler, still got drafted, and he was replaced by a Heisman winner in Caleb Williams. So I think the track record for Lincoln Riley has shown that he's able to kind of keep guys rolling. Different styles of quarterbacks he's had and had a lot of success. He's the only head coach that's ever had 3 #1 overall picks, and he's only been head coach for 8 years. So I think statistically and just the pedigree, what Lincoln Riley brings to the table, you know you can do it. Will it happen, though? Will Miller Moss be the guy? He was an Elite 11 quarterback. He was named the starter about a week or so ago, and I think he's got the tools to do it. High IQ. He's definitely been a good leader on the team. Will he take that team to the next level? We'll see. But Lincoln Riley's got that track record, and I think Miller Moss has the talent there to be able to do that.
Yeah, following up, Jaden Daniels is going to be a guy that I think has a pretty unique story for this day and age of college football. Garrett Nussmeier is a 4th-year guy who's been around the program now for several years, has waited his turn. And I think there's a lot of people here in Baton Rouge that are hoping to see Nussmeier have some success here in year 1. He's a little bit of a different case. Obviously, Jaden Daniels is a guy who is very explosive and was able to do it with his legs and his arm over the last year, which is what helped him win a Heisman Trophy in 2023. With Nussmeier, you're going to see a guy who likes to sling that ball. He's going to be a guy that I think you look at at the end of the season and wouldn't be surprised if he's up there with some of the top quarterbacks in terms of passing yards. He's got a lot of experienced weapons around him, guys that are going to be asked to step into some bigger roles this year at wide receiver and at running back. But he's a guy that I think his story is going to be really shaped by his decision making this year. A guy that can make all the throws, but I think in his limited action that we've seen him throughout his career, it's been that decision making that's been a little bit up and down at times. So we'll see. This is a guy that I think has a lot of potential. He's been kind of on the outside looking in of some Heisman Trophy considerations kind of coming into the year just because of LSU's offense and how explosive they've been over the years. So definitely somebody to keep an eye on, but I think LSU fans are excited about the Nussmeier area finally being here.
So those are the offensive positions that we need to talk about. Defense, that's another comparison. Both of them needed to fix their defenses in the offseason. And both teams, they did bring in new coordinators. Both would like to have probably add more talent than they were able to, especially across the defensive line, but they have who they have. So tell me how each team's defense is going to be better. And Glenn, you can kick us off here.
Yeah, I mean, LSU really has gone full force here of adding a litany of new defensive coaches. They made that staff overhaul back in January, and Brian Kelly wanted to go after the big names, and he got some of the biggest in the business, hiring Blake Baker as his defensive coordinator, Bo Davis, Corey Raymond, Kevin Peoples, just some of the position coaches that have been brought in that are very highly respected across college football. So I think the biggest thing here for LSU is that they're hoping that this defensive staff can really rub off on these players. In 2023, it was a group that was very much kind of just not always knowing what they were supposed to be doing on the field. And I think that there was a lot of communication errors last year. They weren't really aggressive. It was a very passive massive defense, and I think the kind of high energy coaches they brought in at LSU, they're hoping to really turn that around this year, and they're going to be physical. They're going to attack. They're going to be physical. I think definitely in the front seven is where you could see kind of the most improvement here in year one, but certainly across the board here, they're hoping that this defensive staff can really rub off on these players and bring some high energy playmaking back to the Tigers defense.
Yeah, similar on the USC side. Lincoln Riley kind of thought defense would be more of an afterthought, but he really went all in trying to improve on the defensive staff. Bringing in D'Anton Lynn from your rival across town at UCLA. He took a UCLA defense that was in the around 100, and they brought it into a top 20 kind of defense, and he's hoping that he can do the same thing while at USC. But not just there, going out and getting some really experienced staff members. A guy like Doug Belk, who was a defensive coordinator at Houston, comes in to coach your secondary. Matt Entz, who won 2 national championships as the head coach at the FCS level, comes in and he's going to be your linebacker coach. And Eric Henderson comes in from the LA Rams, where he was coaching Aaron Donald, to come in and coach your defensive line. So I think he's put a lot of resources into trying to make this a much better defense. I think last year, 2023. They tried to add the players, and they still had the same schemes, and it didn't really work. I think, though, the reason you would have optimism that USC's defense is going to be a lot better, it's not just the schemes and the plays that are going to be called by D'Anton Lynn, but there was so much confusion with USC players looking at their wristbands and the sidelines, trying to figure out what's going on as the ball is being snapped. I think the guys get it. They understand what they have to do. D'Anton Lynn's really trying to focus them on playing fast and knowing what their assignments are instead of being confused and playing on your heels. So I think the player is going to play a lot faster, and that's why there's a lot of optimism this defense can be a lot better.
It's crazy, the similarities, both of these teams taking defensive coordinators from fellow conference rivals as well to beef up their defenses. So we were sick of waiting for this game. We actually simulated it 20 times on EA College Football 25. It was a tight one. LSU pulling out the win 12 times. So that's a video game. In the real game, for each team, Ryan, you can kick us off. What's the key to pulling out a win week one?
I think the key for USC is going to be, both teams, obviously, you got to get better on defense, but I think USC cannot be pushed around. They have to be able to play at the point of attack, especially on the defensive side of the ball. LSU's come out, players have come out and said, we're going to come and run the ball. And I think LSU can control the game if you're able to run the ball, get a lot of success on first down, and you're in 2nd and 3s and 3rd and 1s, and you can really have take a stranglehold and control this game and sort of take Miller Moss and those wide receivers out of it a little bit. So for me, the key to the game is going to be, it's the old adage we talk about in the 70s NFL, whatever, stopping the run. I think USC really has to stop the run against LSU to have any success.
Yeah, I think I see this one being a game of the trenches for LSU on both sides. We were talking with Will Campbell, the All-American left tackle for LSU, and he said, look, they're coming into this thing in Las Vegas, and they're not going to Caesar's Palace. They're not going to go there to have a good time. This is a business trip, and they're going to be expecting a fist fight from start to finish. So, this is an LSU team that has a lot of pride, especially on the offensive line. They've got a veteran group there, and I think they really have to open up some holes in the run game up front. Some of the big games that LSU's played in the last couple of years, one of the struggles that they've had is opening up the run game from a running back perspective. Jaden Daniels was always there to escape and pick up 100 yards himself, but they weren't able to always get the ground game going with their running back. So I do think that's going to be a huge key for LSU on the offensive side of the ball. And then defensively, trying to make Miller Moss uncomfortable. At the end of the day, these are 2 quarterbacks that are, first-time starters and kind of in their first year is kind of helming these offenses. So getting as much disruption in the backfield, getting as much pressure on the quarterback as possible is going to be where LSU's strengths lie in this game. Because, the defensive line, linebackers, I think that's probably been the one strength that LSU's shown this fall camp. And Harold Perkins is going to be right there in the middle of it to try to wreak some havoc there on these offensive playmakers for USC.
Ryan, you mentioned a bit of a throwback. I'm going throwback with this question. What is the Monday morning headline going to be talking about? What are we going to be talking about after this game is over? I know both of you probably have to file much sooner than Monday morning, so that's why it is a throwback. Glenn, kick us off. What are we talking about Monday?
Yeah, I'll go for a headline, 5 times a charm. It's been 5 years since LSU's won an opening game, and they've really got to get this opener. I think you can really feel that, from everybody that we talked to in the program. It's been since that 2019 national championship year that LSU has won a game one. So I'll go with 5 times a charm, but at the end of the day, I do think this is going to be a game where LSU's going to have to win in the trenches and really get off to a really nice start to kind of give LSU some balance in that offense in the run game.
Yeah, I think if USC gets the win on this one, it'll be the sophomore studs shine. USC's 4 sophomore wide receivers. Everyone knows about Zachariah Branch, but Jacoby Lane, I think he's going to have a huge year for USC. Deuce Robinson, 6'6", he plays baseball too, but just a great wide receiver there. And then Mekhi Levin, maybe the less herald of those, but he might have a huge year as well. I think for Miller Moss and this offense to go, those sophomore wide receivers are going to have some big games, and I think they can. They showed a lot in that bowl game against Louisville, and I think they can do the same thing against LSU in Vegas this weekend.
I love it. Fantastic headlines and fantastic analysis from both of you. We do appreciate it. Throughout the season, you need to keep it locked into these 2 websites, starting with uscfootball.com, of course, all things USC, and then you've got Go 24/7 for everything you need to know about LSU. These writers, their entire crews, they've got you covered all season long.